So I'm excited for our conversation, and for the first time, I'm going to thank you for coming on here and sharing your or giving us your time and sharing your knowledge and experiences with us. So we're going to get rocking and rolling here because I want to respect your time. So everybody, thank you for joining. This is episode number 28 of the Art of Mindful Medicine. I know it's episode 28 already. That seems pretty wild for me. I am Dr. Seth Gilson, biological dentist, yoga teacher, and speaker and personal coach. And my awesome guest today is Dr. Madiha Saeed, also known as the HolisitcMomMD on Instagram and other forms of social media. She is a practicing board certified family physician, health influencer, international speaker, and a best-selling author. Some of her books include the best-selling book, The Holistic RX, Your Guide to Healing Chronic Inflammation and Disease, a best-selling functional medicine children's book series called Adam's Healing Adventures, The Pandemic Prescription, Restoring Hope from the Quran, Sunnah, and Science, and The Holistic RX for Kids, Parenting Healthy Brains and Bodies in a Changing World. I do believe there are some more, and then I know there's some more coming out, but that's a few of them for you guys to start with. Dr. Saeed is the Director of Education for Documenting Hope and Know We Well. She sits on multiple medical advisory boards, including Nagamia Institute of Islamic Medicine and Sciences, Mamapotamus and Wellness Mama. She was named one of the 100 most influential people in health and wellness, which is pretty awesome. Dr. Saeed and her children speak internationally in the most prestigious holistic conferences, summits, radio, and newspaper. She's also a regular on the international Emmy-winning medical talk show, The Dr. Nandi Show. Dr. Saeed's children host the Holistic Kids Show, a podcast interviewing the biggest names in the functional, holistic, and integrative medicine world, helping kids empower and educate other kids. They speak internationally, igniting the world with their energy and passion to enrich a healing revolution to save our future. So that is just a very brief overview of what Dr. Saeed is up to and has been up to and is continuing to be up to. And I think all of that is just very beautiful. And fittingly, I always like to start with gratitude. So Madiha, if you could please share with us 3 things you are grateful for today.
Oh my gosh. A home, family, and health.
Beautiful. Home, family, and health.
Uh,
Th-
we
those.
just, yeah, there was a tornado that passed like 4 miles away from our house the
Oh
other
wow.
day. So that's why I am so thankful for just like a home and health and family. Everybody's healthy. So,
Yeah, tornadoes are one of those natural disasters. Tornadoes and earthquakes are
yes.
2 things that I don't know. I just try and avoid living in areas where those things happen.
Yeah, they're 1972. So not since I've been on this planet. So
Yeah.
kind of crazy, but thankfully that, that's over with.
Yes, and I'm happy you and your family are safe. So,
Yeah.
speaking of you and your family, please share with us, if you don't mind, a little bit about your background, your life growing up, where you're from, all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for having me. This is awesome.
Of
I
course.
love the art of mindful medicine. Like, isn't that the way that medicine should be? Like, that's the way that it should be.
That's the way I think about it. But
And so, I didn't really always practice mindful medicine. I, grew up in Naperville, Illinois. Went to, I went to, residency, all of these places, but then my symptoms all sort of came to a head. I was a new mom, a new wife, a new resident, all at the same time. And me and my husband, who's also a family physician, we were both working like 80-hour work weeks. And so that I continue to get sicker and sicker because what happens when you have like free food at the cafeteria? You have chronic stress and all those toxins that you're putting on yourselves, environmental toxins, all the hand sanitizer you're using on a daily basis. And then
not sleeping very much.
the lack of sleep.
Hmm.
And then so like one thing after another, the negativity, the stress. So it was all sort of compiled together. And that's when I started developing, like, first it was small chronic illnesses that was like, oh, normal. This is just your new normal. So first it was, my, digestive issues, my acne, my eczema, seborrheic dermatitis. Then it sort of, whirlwind to like Hashimoto's. And, but then I continued on that hamster wheel. I kept on going. I kept on going. And then I was diagnosed with lupus, even though I'm a joint pain, the ulcers in the mouth, all those things that was going on. And I was like, I continued on the hamster wheel until one day my husband had this gut inclination and he was like, can you go check up on my 10-month-old that's at the daycare that was attached to the hospital in South Bend, Indiana? And I walk over there and my nightmare sort of unfolds. And the lights were dimmed. The daycare provider was rocking back and forth and back and forth in her chair. And like that silence was broken by a in the back. And I found my 10-month-old wrapped arms and legs tied down with a receiving blanket pacifier in his mouth. He was basically, and she took the blanket and wrapped it around multiple times around his face. And he was like, eyes were bloodshot, face was glistening, and it was craziness.
Whoa.
Yes. So I picked him up. I'm like, you could have killed my child. I ran out. And at that time, the universe, God saved my child. And I promise I'm at that moment, I like made this solemn vow that, I mean, it was just out of nowhere. Like my husband just had this gut inclination. I just went and checked and this is what was happening. Usually I pick him up at like 5 o'clock, but do you see how I was just so thankful for that. And, so at that time, I sort of made a vow that I promise I'm going to take care of these children the best that I know how. And, but then I'm like, wait, as a family physician, I myself am falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
So how am I supposed to take care of the future generation if I don't even know how to take care of myself?
Yeah.
As a family physician who's supposed to be all preventative and, no, I had no clue on how to improve my own health. And so that's when I started this journey.
And this is after medical school, and you were already a physician.
Yes. So this is literally in like the second year of residency where I was starting to inquire. I met this amazing doctor who was an OBGYN and his wife. They started a clinic. They were actually our attendings. They started a clinic called Physicians Holistic Health Alliance, and in South Bend, Indiana. And they taught me everything that I need. They took me on, and under one roof, there was me, an OBGYN, an internist, an exercise physiologist, nutritionist, counseling, chiropractor, massage therapy, mental
Wow.
health, homeopathy, like all under one roof, brought together for the complete healing of the whole person. And this is really weird for me because I just came out of residency. We're just used to saying, okay, one symptom and one symptom only. You have 10 minutes, and now I have to go. And then I was sort of shunned down upon when I spent a little bit more time with the patient.
Mm-hmm. Sorry.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Internet. That's what happened.
Kicked me off.
It's all good. So you're go ahead.
So then I joined this medical practice, and that was something that I was so not used to. Actually listening to the patient, talking to them, putting everything together, using all different modalities in our tool belt to help them achieve optimal health. And so one patient after another, and I'm like, oh my God, they're just continuing to get better. My first patient was like a 31-year-old with 9 autoimmune diseases, myasthenia gravis, psoriasis, lichen planus, Sjogren's, Hashimoto's, all these chronic health conditions. And so I'm like, she's like, she worked at the Family Dollar store, and she was basically like, I need to improve my overall health. Where am I going to start?
Mm-hmm.
And what was a blessing was that I was like, okay, let's just start with this, and immediately, like at 1 month, 50% resolution of symptoms.
Wow.
And now now she's a scuba diver instructor. So
Beautiful.
you have somebody like a myasthenia gravis, which is like autoimmune disease of the muscle,
Mm-hmm.
who's now a scuba diver instructor where you need every muscle to be working properly.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
That's really amazing. And then since then, that's why while I was having child after child after child, my husband was my sugar daddy. So he continued to work. And then I was working part-time and then researching and reading and compiling and educating myself on all of these different modalities to heal. And that's when I combined the Holistic RX, your guide to healing chronic inflammation and disease,
Wow. Wow. That's
with
awesome.
integrative functional holistic medicine all under one source, covering over 80 conditions for the whole family.
So it was really just like a series of um, unfortunate circumstances of your own health and some crazy situation with one of your babies that kind of led you to seeking other means and kind of getting connected with this other group.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
And so just by doing that, and that's where I've been. So that's why I started Holistic Mom MD, because I knew I wanted to incorporate my family into this, because
That
I made a vow to take care of my family the way that the best that I know how. And so I just sort of, you know, because as I learned, the more I started to implement. And that's where, and I'm like, if I can do it, anybody can do it, because I live with right now, currently I live with a family of 8. So I feed a family of 8 on a daily basis.
yeah, yeah, I see all the food you're cooking.
I'm always, it doesn't look like, I mean, it looks like I'm always cooking, but I'm not. The fridge is packed because it's nutrient dense foods
Yeah.
that go a long way. And you only need a little bit, like, so to satiate. So, so that's really my mission and my passion with Holistic Mom MD, is to really educate and empower families that it's easy, time, cost effective, just start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Those little itty bitty changes can really, you know,
That's
be really.
exactly right, and that's something I talk about patients every day. It's not like you have to make all of these massive changes at once.
No.
Just start somewhere with one thing, and then make it a good habit, and be very consistent, be disciplined with it, and you got your whole life. Don't purposely delay things, but I mean, take your time and do things in. You want to kind of push your threshold to the threshold, and not so much past the threshold. And I think that's what life's kind of really about, and that's what I try and get through to patients, and that's certainly what it sounds like you're doing. And that was what I was going to ask you, is like how you came up with the name Holistic Mom MD, and it just sounds like unfortunate circumstances with your family, and a vow to yourself. And that's the other thing that I've kind of noticed, is that people have to go through some kind of huge trauma in order to see things in a different way. Is that what you find with people as well?
I do. But then I'm one of the blessed ones that actually, changed and continue to look for answers despite being a physician, so I felt like I had to still learn all of medicine, the parts that really, really mattered for chronic care, all over again.
Mm-hmm.
In chronic care management, I mean, we're nobody's taught inflammation, nobody's taught, about the immune system, about how it really integrates, and because an overreactive immune system versus an underreactive, and how that implies to your health. So I had to sort of learn all that on my own. But the thing is, unfortunately, not that many people, like some people are able to then look for these other answers. And that's why I'm so passionate to really get this message out there, that there is another way.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times people will get sick and then they'll just only do conventional medicine, which is great for acute care. But when it comes to chronic care, doing a combination of both really does help. So again, I was very thankful and fortunate that my mind wanted to go there, and I was able to learn about it, because I was connected with lots of holistic practitioners
Mm-hmm.
in residency. And but if I had not known that, I don't know where I would have even found that out. Because again, as we go down that conventional medical training, we're just taught that this is the only way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I mean, the doctors hate those patients. Like, literally, we despise the patients. The worst patients are those that use Dr. Google, their research, that come with their own notes, because it's like either it's my way or the highway, is literally what we were taught. And so, yeah. Unfortunately, so then I was very fortunate that there was another, medical doctor who was like, no, there's so much more to this. And that's where I was able to open. So there's a lot of people unfortunately don't know that option exists, and that's where it's my mission to help them
Beautiful.
understand.
Awesome. And what are some of the ways that you kind of introduce this to people that maybe don't have these chronic illnesses or aren't suffering yet or haven't gone through a trauma, but just want to make sure they're healthy or just want to, I guess, be proactive about these things? I mean, what are some of the ways you get people to see this other way of doing things?
It really starts with education,
Mm-hmm.
right? And because if you don't know it exists, then how would you even go about it? So really starting off with education, us as physicians know that the immune system is involved in all these chronic health conditions. We know that, if we give an anti-inflammatory to those people with allergies. We give an anti-inflammatory to those people with eczema. We give an anti-inflammatory to those people who have chronic pain, an anti-inflammatory to somebody who has a headache, an anti-inflammatory to a person who has autoimmune disease and even cancer. So we all know that one of the key pieces is inflammation. So if we can lower the overall inflammation, we can improve not one of these chronic symptoms, but then all of them simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where when people come to me with lots of chronic issues, or maybe just one or maybe none, it really goes down, it starts with education to show them that, you know what, let me tell you about the immune system. Let me tell you why you're feeling the way you're feeling. And then let me tell you, let's figure out what your individual puzzle pieces are, because everybody is different. For somebody, it could be they're not exercising, they're stressed, but their diet may be great, right? So everybody has different puzzle pieces, because when your body is off balance, that then leads to disease.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that mindful medicine really comes into play, because the fact that if you want to really look inwards and figure out, okay, where am I out of balance? And I teach my kids that, I teach my family members that. You want to always look to see, where am I sort of call it your digestive health, and detoxification, the 4S of stress, sleep, social, and spiritual health. And so all of those pieces, if any of those are out of balance, they can actually lead to more chronic health conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So I have
those again: stress, sleep,
social, and spiritual health.
social and spiritual health.
And then the digestive health and detoxification. So digestive health, detoxification, the 4S, stress, sleep, social, and spiritual health. And I have somebody, really try to balance all of those main pieces,
Mm-hmm.
starting with gratitude for spiritual health, meditation, yoga, forgiveness, having purpose in life. And then we have optimizing your sleep, making sure you surround yourself with people who will lift you up, not drag you down, because love does heal. Stress, teaching them stress management,
Mm-hmm.
because 80 to 90% of the complaints that come to primary care physicians are due to stress. And then your digestion, really working on their digestion, and their detoxification, and their hormone. So just that's where I really started off with, is all of those different pieces, and then I go from there.
Yeah, I definitely, two of the things that I always tell people, patients and friends that I have discussions with, I think education and self-love are two of the most important aspects of life. And essentially most of our problems in the world, individually and collectively, stem from those two issues. So, and I think the education part, it really is kind of, I guess, is, now that I'm hearing you talk about it more, it's easier than I previously thought, because we all know somebody that has a chronic disease. Mm-hmm. And if somebody has seen that and watched that, what some of these people go through. And when you are educated properly about these different types of things that you mentioned, the sleep, stress, social, spiritual health, digestive health, detoxification, you see what the result of these things are, and you can prevent a lot, all of these chronic disorders that are supposedly unpreventable, and where we don't know where they come from, and we just like to blame our genetics.
Absolutely.
So, and then there's something that you keep mentioning, which I love, and of course, one of the main reasons why we're here is mindfulness. And one of the things I'd love for you to share with us is what mindfulness means to you.
Mhm. To me, mindfulness is the feeling that you're feeling at this moment. Feeling, hearing, seeing, physical, mental, emotional, psychological, spiritual, at this moment without judgment. And when we, and that without judgment is really important because of the fact that if we were judgmental, we would criticize these feelings as bad or good. But when we can see these feelings or what we're feeling or how we're living as, for example, oh, my body hurts. Okay, but your body hurts, but is that a good, so without judgment. Okay, so what is my body trying to tell me? You know, and for me, that's really what mindful medicine is all about, is to use these symptoms and these signs and how you're feeling mentally, emotionally, physically, psychologically, spiritually, to help guide you to be a better you. And like, for example, if you're too, well, how am I feeling? Oh, I'm really stressed right now in my shoulders. Okay, let's do something about it,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not good or bad, but let's get you feeling better. But very similar. So just how you are in this moment. I think we run. I mean, I'm a mom of four, my from 13 to 6. so so sometimes we're running through life just like thinking about the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, the
Mm-hmm.
next thing, and enjoying the present, to being mindful. And I teach the kids about mindfulness and really looking within again, how are they feeling at that moment, without judgment, and that has really helped them. So what I've done is the way that I implement that in like almost everything that we do is how are you, so now they're able to at every moment really look within and see how they're feeling. In the morning time the other day, my 7-year old, at the time he was 7, now he just turned 8, but he was coming downstairs and he was eating a bowl of sauerkraut, and I was like, why are you eating sauerkraut in the morning for breakfast? Just like full fledged, just that's all he was eating. And he's like, Mom, I woke up this morning and I just felt a little irritated, and so I'm like, okay, how can I improve this? So then I went downstairs. I wanted to improve my gut microbiome. And so I went and I started to eat just a little sauerkraut to help me put my body back into balance. And
That's an
so,
8-year-old, a newly 8-year-old, talking about
yes,
his gut microbiome.
yes. No, and then my 5-year-old will do this. They just turned 6 too, so they're all, we've had lots of birthdays. But the thing is, like, they're able to look within at that moment and make decisions accordingly. And they're doing that with their emotions. They're doing that with their how they're feeling. Um, they do it with basically all day long, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, like pre-teens and teens, like that's pretty amazing.
Well, yeah. So then, as soon as, like, for example, my 13-year-old will be like, "Oh, I feel a little agitated. I must have not gotten enough sleep yesterday. Today, I'm going to sleep early."
13.
Yes.
If anybody has kids, you know what a 13-year-old is like, and that is not the normal conversation.
That is not. But that's what's so powerful. And that's what I wrote this in my next book, is called The Holistic RX for Kids, Parenting Healthy Brains and Bodies for in a Changing World. And I go into the steps, the real life parenting solutions to raise resilient, mindful children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Because
mean, that's mindful parenting right there.
yes. To really figure out, where are your imbalances, how are you feeling, what's going on in the situation,
I
and
mean,
then
what was that like? Yeah, I mean, people. I mean, that's really important. I mean, I'm intrigued to know. But I mean, for anybody that's a parent or is going to be a parent, I mean, these are really important things. I mean, in this day and age, to get, like I said, teens and preteens to talk about their gut microbiome and sleeping habits. I mean, I mean, that's a lot of diligence on you and your husband's part. I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
how did? I mean, you can just give an example or a story. I mean, like, how does something like that even work?
So I think it starts off with being a role model, right? So, I mean, as I said, the more I learned, the more I implemented.
Mm-hmm.
So as I learned, I'm having these conversations with my children on a regular basis that, oh, guess what? This is what I learned. What do you guys think about this? Is this something that you guys want to implement or not? And they'll give my yay or the nay. I mean, it's all about education. Like we're constantly talking about, in like about just, ways that we can improve our overall health and well-being. And I mean, you need to have conversations with these kids. So for me, these were the conversations that I was having with them as I was learning. I'm like, check this out, you guys. This is so cool. This is what I learned today. What did you guys learn today? Or when we go to the grocery store, we see, oh, I'm like, let's go down these aisles. Let's figure out, okay, what do you guys want? And then the stuff like they'll pick up, like, initially when I started this, they would pick up like Dum-Dums or candy. And then they're like, but I'm like, well, let's read that. And they're like, I don't know what that is. So at this time, my oldest is like 5 or 6. And I'm like, well, let's go back and, oh, this is related to hyperactivity and even like cancers and tumors. Do you want to put this in your body? They're like, no. And so it's all about educating them alongside. I mean, if they can figure out how phones work, how video games work, they can figure out how this body works.
For sure.
And then really teaching them, I mean, just as I continue to learn. So when I had a rash, I'll be like, oh, I have a rash, or I don't feel well, or I talk to the kids about how I'm feeling. And then what probably could have caused that. And so now they think they do the exact same thing now. So for example, if their mood is even off, they'll be like, oh, why is before even, acting upon that, they'll just sit back, they'll either take a nap, do whatever they need to do to help them regain that balance. So
that's more maturity than most 50-year-olds that I've met. So
that's where I was so passionate in putting this book together, because I have sort of been, experimenting. I've been studying parenting for the last 12 years, right? So as soon as I've had my 10-month-old, right after that, I'm like, okay, I'm going to take care of these kids. I taught parenting to my residents in residency. So I've been passionate about parenting for a long time. And now you combine that with functional medicine, that takes parenting to a whole different level. But it really comes down to educating and empowering your children giving them the autonomy that they need. But then the thing is, you can give them all the autonomy, but if they're going to make terrible decisions, that we have a problem. So it really starts off with being mindful, knowing what they, when they're off balance. I've been teaching them. I'm like, so alongside, I'm like, oh, I'm feeling off balance. Okay, what are we gonna do to improve that balance? Mm-hmm. Oh, Mom, I got an ulcer yesterday. I had this. Maybe that caused that. So they're immediately
at least looking for answers to make connections. It might not necessarily always be that one thing, but I mean, at least trying to figure these things out rather than just like ignoring them or pretending it's a coincidence of or not even thinking twice about it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And so just having them constantly, take a look within.
Yeah. I think that's some beautiful lessons right there.
Yeah, no, it's so much fun to see them grow. I mean, obviously when they poop, they're like, oh, Mom, I had diarrhea. I'm like, why do you think that could be? So it was me like teaching them and teaching them and mentoring them along the way.
Of course.
But now when they do it on their own, it is just so powerful. They're like, Mom, my body is really craving sauerkraut right now, or my body needs seaweed. I think I'm low, and I'm like, this is a 7-year-old, 8-year-old.
That's wild. Yeah. You're like, I think I did something right.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know how long this will last. But I'm gonna take it for the win, because I recognize that we live in a society right now where we are taught to sort of push away our feelings, either label them as good or bad. Um,
According to
and
someone else's definition of what's good or bad as well.
yeah, that's what the biggest thing, exactly. And or just like if you're out of balance, you're gonna stay out of balance. There's no other way. So unfortunately that's where I was taught. I was taught, okay, I have all these chronic health conditions, I feel miserable. I'm sorry, that's just your new normal. No, it's not. My body was incredibly out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
And once I was able to listen to what my body needed, the stress management, the sleep, all these different pieces, I was able to put my body back into balance. And that's again what I do with my children and my patients. I
Awesome.
have them going through like the digestive health and detoxification, the 4S of stress, sleep, social, and spiritual health.
Awesome. Awesome. So there were a couple of questions, and I just want to touch on them briefly. And I think that you started to, just by education and autonomy, but also being aware and just paying attention. And that's you paying attention, because somebody asked about social influences. And I think when we teach our kids how to think,
Mm-hmm.
then I mean the social impact. I mean, look, you're not going to be perfect. We're not perfect. I mean, there's got to be there's give and take. There's just got to be. You just have to be more on the good side, a lot more on the good side than you are on that not so good side.
Absolutely. And what I talk about in this next book that's coming out in November, what I talk about is how there's two main pieces of our decision making, and there's our prefrontal cortex and our amygdala. And we need both of them to be working appropriately in order to have thought out decisions. But unfortunately, in our society, the lack of sleep, the lack of mindful meditation, the lack of nutritious food, lack of nature, so too much screen time, all of these are so many different pieces that can disconnect our prefrontal cortex to our amygdalas.
Yeah.
And therefore, you're making now children are making irrational decisions. So to really use, science to our benefit and give your child all the environment that they need to make sure their prefrontal cortex and their amygdala are working appropriately, so they're able to make those thought out decisions even despite the social influences, and to really help them think for themselves, because the world around them right now is obviously telling you that all this fast food is good, all this is good. So you want to them to now be critical of that thinking, sort of, and have them, be their own, be the captain of their own ship, and not have
Exactly.
anybody else make those decisions for them. But then really providing them with the environment that they need to allow them to make good decisions. Like, for example, I know in my house, I rarely say no to food. Why? Because of the fact that my house is packed with everything they can eat. They can have anything. There's popsicles in the fridge that have no sugar in them that are just fruit. There is chips in the pantry that are made out of cassava flour. There's cookies if they need the cookies. Or whatever there is, it's there. So
Mm-hmm.
there's limited arguments there. So I feel like when a child feels they have the freedom to choose, they're not being suppressed at home, so they don't need, when they go out and they're fulfilled at home, when they go out, they don't need that stuff, because everybody else is having candy, so are my kids.
Yeah.
They're like candy when they want candy, like better versions of candy, right? It's all there. Chocolate with the no sugar. But then, so when they go out and they see these chemicals, and that's another thing that what I've done is, I've sort of called it what it is. And so these are chemicals
Mm-hmm.
or food-like substances, and we don't call them food.
Mm-hmm.
We've never really, since we've learned about them, the more we've learned, the more the kids started changing it. They're like, Mom, that's just a chemical. I'm like, what does red number 40 even grow on? They're like, Mama, that doesn't grow on anything. So I'm like, why isn't food then?
That's a great
It's made
question.
in, right? And so they actually came up with the name. They're like, oh, that's just a chemical then. That's made in a plant. And so we don't call it food. So I think
That's
that's
a
where, like,
chemical plant, not a plant
that
plant.
exactly, that's a chemical plant, not from a plant. So then when they go out, they don't even like, because I'm not suppressing them at home, I'm giving them the autonomy of eating whatever they want to eat. they'll tell me what they want me to cook. They'll come in the kitchen with me. They get their burritos, their tacos, their whatever they need, but with healthier options when they go out. And so then they're less influenced by the social world around them, because one, they're the captain of their own ship, and they're able to make those decisions and be educated. Like I will even go to a party where it's one of my closest friends, and I know that everything that she's like organic, she's non-GMO, and she'll have snacks out there, but they're still over there. And I was watching them. They were still reading all the ingredients. And they're like, no, I'm not in the mood of like even organic natural flavors, Mom, today. I was like, what? I'm like, okay.
I don't
And
even know about the organic natural flavors. I don't even know what that means.
but this is the thing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they were, but I've given that permission. Like this, you're at a party. I know it's clean, because do what you want. They were still there reading the ingredients, checking things out, trying to understand what they're putting in their bodies.
Beautiful.
And so, yeah,
So it basically sounds like you're saying educate yourself so that therefore you can educate your kids and lead by example.
Absolutely.
To put it in a very compact way. Um, so
And another big thing I think is, and to be grateful and to
yes.
be thankful. Because right now we live in a world, and I think that's one of the biggest pieces that that sort of disconnects the prefrontal cortex to the amygdala, is all of the stress that we're living in, and also the negativity. Because when our children are, we are living in a world. Their kids are living in a world that's completely different than when you and I were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We
Yeah.
didn't cell phones and things like that. We didn't have any. We had no idea. I don't even remember if I knew half the time who the president was. You know what? All I know is I was just in my zone. I was playing outside in a cul-de-sac. I had fun. I didn't know what was going on in the world. The kids know. They're like constantly, bombarded with and most news is negative news.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot less positive versus the negative. So there's negativity in their social lives. There's negativity on the news, and especially us as family, as parents. If we're always picking on their negative pieces, that the things that are going wrong in their lives, because unfortunately, happiness doesn't sell. So the world around them has taught them to be negative, and has changed our subconscious to be negative. And same with us parents. We're always wanting the best for our kids by nagging them and picking at them. And so in my house, we focus only on the things that are going right in our lives. And so immediately when we wake up in the morning, we see 10 things that we're thankful for every day.
Beautiful.
My kids are constantly they know that they need to, if they feel like they need to complain, they'll like up the gratitude a little bit more. But what's really powerful, but that's super powerful, because now you have a child that is fully content with everything they have been given.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, and it's going to take time. And that's something that as a parent, as us, as an adult, I have to constantly, consciously change my subconscious to think positive.
Yeah.
So then I do that with the kids like all day long. Not their faults. So I don't really highlight any of their faults, because all of us have faults, but really highlighting all the things that they're doing right. And they'll be like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. You're such a great drawer. Check you out. You're such a big boy.
I think
just
that's
things
really important. I mean, it's so important to focus on the good things that we have and that we do, but also acknowledge the other side, that it's not like you pretend it doesn't exist. Because I know there's a whole kind of culture that just kind of pushes aside any and all negativity, and everything's light and perfect and beautiful. And that's not the case, but it's definitely where you put your energy and where you focus your energy.
Because obviously the kids know what's going on. So we talk about what's going on in the world, positive or negative. But then, yeah, exactly. So we put the energy mostly where it's positive. And I mean, just concentrating on the things because we all have things that are going wrong in our lives, but your perspective can either be your pain, or your perspective can be your power.
Yeah.
And so, And so that's where I help them change their perspective and talk about what's going on in the world, but then help them see that in a different light.
So it sounds like what you're talking about is one of the terms for it, anyways, is mindset. And
Yes.
I mean, how important is that to our overall health, really, for kids and adults?
Oh, huge, huge. Because you can have people who are on the best diet. They can be, trying to do yoga and meditation. They can, be exercising, but if they're always like, if their mindset is negative, no matter what you do, it's still going to really cause inflammation and stress because they're always, yeah. So no matter, and I mean, they've done studies by HeartMath has done studies where, like, if you're frustrated, your heart rate variability is all over the place. But when you live a life of appreciation, your heart rate variability is a nice sine wave.
Wonderful.
So again, your mindset, your perspective is really important.
And some of the
And
things
when I have
go ahead, go ahead.
no, no, no,
I was gonna say some of the
no, and
things.
then it
Oh, sorry, there's a delay.
sorry.
No, that's fine. You go.
So, but then when you start to implement all of these pieces into your daily routine, yes, it may be a little bit difficult to begin with, but it makes my job and my duties as a parent so much easier. So, because now they're able, if I can teach my kids to live mindfully, to understand how they're feeling, to be grateful children, that increases their resilience in whatever the world is going to throw at them.
Yeah, resilience is so important. I mean, so important. And some of the things that you were talking about, that you mentioned multiple times, stress and inflammation. So, how does stress damage our health, and kind of what does that kind of cascade of events look like? Because there's different kinds of stress, right? And they can all cause inflammation. And I mean, whether it's social stress, physical stress, that one can translate to the other. So, what are some of the ways that looks like? What does that look like in the body? How does that kind of damage us?
So, we know that 80 to 90% of the complaints that come to primary care physicians are due to stress.
Mm-hmm.
And the stress in and of itself destroys the gut microbiome. It feeds the bad bacteria. It, it destroys the good bacteria and then good bugs in your belly. It weakens the immune system. It increases cortisol, that increases glucose, that raises insulin and leads to insulin resistance and leptin resistance. It overall basically destroys and wreaks havoc on almost every organ system.
Mm-hmm.
And most importantly, also that it destroys the connection between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. So it, snips it off. So we're making irrational decisions. And if we can teach our children, our families, and our patients to really implement, a stress management technique into their daily routine, that helps to keep these damaging hormones at bay. So, because a lot of times, I mean, in trauma can lead to these stresses, and so our subconscious, if it's always negative, that can always lead to a lot of the stress.
I think some of the connections people have trouble making is say you have these negative thoughts, or you're mulling over something that happened a week ago. So how is it that these thoughts turn into damaging our gut bacteria? I mean, that's what I feel like a lot of people don't really see the connection there. And I mean, I'll let you explain. I'm sure there's different hormone pathways and things like that, but I think that's a connection that a lot of people just don't get.
So because stress, I mean, stress doesn't just affect one hormone. There's so many hormones that stress influences, and cortisol being one of them. And so an elevated cortisol, so anytime these hormones are out of balance, our neurotransmitters are out of balance, It sort of destroys the so there's a different how can I so the biggest connection between our brain and our gut is through the vagus nerve.
Mm-hmm.
So when our brain is stressed and our body is stressed, it sort of leads through the vagus nerves. It leads to increased stress. It weakens your gut bacteria, weakens sort of your immune system, and lowers the secretory IgA, which is really important for the immune system overall.
Mm-hmm.
So, so just by all these neurotransmitters, the imbalances that we're putting in our body, the lack of sleep. So, I mean, there's so many different ways that it can influence the gut microbiome, but most importantly, the 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 gut microbiome is really because just through the vagus nerve. The another huge piece of the puzzle also is that stress can actually lower the release of hydrochloric acid.
Mm-hmm.
So that then affects the digestive enzymes, and it lowers the absorption of these nutrients. It promotes the overgrowth of this bad bacteria just because our digestion doesn't work the way that it should.
Mm-hmm. And
And
I know it's very complicated, and I mean, I'm asking a question that is just like you can teach an entire course on. So, I know it's hard to give like a 2 minute answer to something like this, but it just leads to a cascade of events of multiple hormones that essentially affect our gut in a multitude of negative ways over. And when you do this over a long period of time, it turns into chronic problems.
chronic, exactly. And then, and again, because the gut contains all of these, receptors that react to the gut bacteria and its metabolite and produces neurotransmitters. So stress then, because stress can, one of the biggest ways I think is where stress can lower that hydrochloric acid, and and when you lower that hydrochloric acid, obviously then there's a lot more bad bacteria that's coming
That can
through
flourish.
that.
Yeah.
Because for me, for example, I know that was one of my biggest problems when I was writing like 5 books all at once. I found myself getting a little indigestion, and I was like, "Oh, what's going on here?" I mean, obviously, it was like the pandemic, and then it was one thing after another, and I recognized, oh my gosh, stress totally weakened my HCl production, and so therefore now it's destroyed the rest of my gut microbiome, and just because the fact that it's just not working properly. And and so I had to add back in the HCl, and now I don't. I mean, now my body is able to, now that I've been back into stress management techniques, making those appropriate hormones and neurotransmitters that I need. I don't have any more indigestion anymore, and I can
Beautiful.
stop the
Great.
HCl. So
And
the body just works the way it should be.
exactly, and that's a great example of kind of using both schools of thought. Being aware and conscious of what's going. Okay, there's something off in my body. What can I do for a short period of time to kind of help regulate myself, and then get back to my normal?
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about the gut microbiome, and somebody was asking before how that's linked with depression. And I mean, you can elaborate on this, but my understanding is that the bacteria, they communicate back and forth. Like that cascade of events that affects the microbiome of our gut, and the microbiome of our gut talks to our cells,
Absolutely.
and it creates this cycle, that becomes a chronic cycle essentially.
Absolutely. And remember, 90% of your serotonin and 50% of your dopamine is made in the gut. So if, we need these neurotransmitters for our brains and bodies to work appropriately. So if your gut is not functional, then it also creates, these neurotransmitters are also not being created the way that they should be, or even functioning in the way that they should. So that then can lead to mood disorders and other chronic.
Makes sense. So I want to be respectful of your time. I know we're winding down here, but I was looking at some of your stuff on your website, and can you just briefly tell us a little bit about the Holistic RX 101 course? Is that for anybody to take? Is that for practitioners? I mean, is that just for your patients? How does that work?
Anybody. So that one is called Real Healing for Real Life. So it's like to the point, what do I do? How do I do it? How do you implement it? Because a lot of times you go into a course and you there's just way too much information, but there's less about implementation.
Mm-hmm.
And
Beautiful.
so all about implementation and how I was able to do it and how I help my patients and my families do it, and how to live this lifestyle. So that's why I called Real Healing for Real Life. That not all of us can do, you know, every single solitary thing, but just starting somewhere with easy time, um, cost effective tips that we can incorporate into our daily routines
Mm-hmm.
that can then improve our immune systems to help our bodies get back into balance.
Makes sense. Beautiful. So definitely go check that out, guys. That's the Holistic RX 101 course on Dr. Saeed's website. Also on your website, which I find this really fascinating. I'm really interested, and like I said, I want to be respectful of your time, but this was something that I really want to hear how you do this. And within your website, you have another website called HolisitcMuslim.com. And how do you combine science and holistic healthy living with your religion? Because I find that to be something that people who are faith and religious have a really tough time doing, because it's either
Absolutely.
like all religion or it's all something else. And how do you mix the two?
So and this is again, I've the three books that one of them, I have three books coming out in November, and one of them is actually called The Quranic Prescription, Living the Quran and Sunnah to Optimize Health, Healing, and Save Our Future. And I recognize that with all religions, we have to take care of the body that the universe has given us, right? So I know that even Dr. Mark Hyman was telling Will Smith at the end of his talk was, you just want to eat the food that God made, don't eat the food that man made, period. Like that is really as simple as it is. And I know that that's a common thread with all religions, and just taking care of the health so you can serve a higher being, entity, a purpose, and
Whatever they believe in.
whatever they believe in,
Yeah.
exactly. So just taking, because obviously if you're not taking care of this, then you can't do certain things.
100%. And I think whether you call it whatever you call it, whether it's God, I mean that I think is within each of us. So when we
Absolutely.
take care of ourselves, we are essentially showing that respect and showing that love to whatever that higher being, purpose, energy is.
Absolutely. And so as specifically with Muslims, when I started understanding functional medicine, I combined it with what our scripture had told us. And actually in our scripture, it immediately points to that if you really truly are believers, you have to eat real food.
I
So I
don't.
mean that,
Okay.
so for
Can't
me,
argue that.
you can't argue that one. So for us, so that's where I combine that together, because for me, nutrition is so important. And now I have a justification for the rest of the Muslims and trying to get them on board, because some of the probably, I mean, what my idea, like what I've noticed is some of the most unhealthiest people on the planet are the Muslims. And with like the most obese countries in the world, like
Really.
Pakistan, India, yeah, like Qatar is one of the, Kuwait is one of like the most obese countries in the world. They say by 2035, just in a couple more years, just like you know by 2035, 95% of the Middle East and North African countries will be diabetic.
Wow.
So exactly. So that's why for me, I mean, we know that food is medicine. And now if I can get convince that side of the planet to like start changing by
That's
using scripture,
wild.
that is wild.
Not
So
that. Sorry. Go ahead. That.
yeah, no, it's getting scarier and scarier. Like everybody is very obese. The concept, they don't need yeah, I cannot find anything organic that's halal even.
Mm.
Now that gives you like a huge insight of what's going on. So yeah, so I see a comment. Yeah, so the richer countries, so they're very rich, and they
Hmm.
have all their oil, but they're very overweight and obese.
It's
And
so
so
interesting.
empower any way that I can get them to make that connection and take care of the temple, because no matter what religion you believe in, we all know that this is the only place that we're going to live. And so
Yeah.
we have to take care of this the best that we know how to then achieve whatever you would like to
Yeah,
achieve.
and that's even for people that don't believe in religion. I mean, you still have this
No,
body. You're still here. I
you're
mean,
still
even
here.
if you believed in reincarnation, I mean, you're still here now. Like, I mean, you're here. I believe that we're all here for a reason. So you might as well make the best of it.
Yeah.
So treat yourself well. That'll help you have a better, happier, more fulfilling life. You'll treat other people better. I mean, I don't think people really understand how insulin resistance really is one of. I mean, not only is diabetes and insulin resistance. When I say those two, I'm kind of speaking somewhat interchangeably for argument's sake. Uh, I mean, it's so widespread and it's a man-made chronic disease.
It's a
It's
man-made
purely diet and nutrition.
early diet. Absolutely.
It's so
So if
wild.
Yeah, and so this is where I really start. I mean, this is why in my own house, nutrition is one of the cornerstones of how I live. You know, really focusing on nutrition along with everything else, your digestive health and detoxification, the four S's: stress, sleep, social, and spiritual health, and then being mindful because you don't need that much food to survive. I think we now are living to just eat,
Hmm.
even though we should just eat just to live. You know, we don't need that much food. Um, and yeah, so the insulin resistance is a huge piece of that puzzle, and we're just getting sicker with 88% of Americans being metabolically unstable. We That's a huge place to start.
Yeah, and I mean, just not to get into it, but even just what's going on in the world right now. I mean, metabolic health is so critically important, and just modifying small parts of your diet and nutrition a little bit at a time, moving your body a little bit and doing all the things you said: stress, sleep, social and spiritual health, digestive, like those things are so important, and
They're
they
big.
go such a long way.
Absolutely. And this last year, I loved it because all four of my kids are home. So I was like, yes, this is so much fun. So I incorporate all of these different pieces that we should be incorporating. You know, we're all waking up, we're all trying to sleep, we're all eating. So why not do it so that it benefits us? So
Absolutely.
and so that's what it just incorporate these pieces into your daily routine so then you don't even have to think twice about it.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
That's beautiful. I think that's a good place to end. Um, I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about one of your books, but if you have a minute, I can ask you about it. If not,
Please.
so I think you mentioned it before, the Holistic RX for Kids: Parenting Healthy Brains and Bodies in a Changing World. I think this is something. By the way, I ordered it. I'm probably gonna get another one because I want to give it to my brother. And this is the future. I mean, children are the future, and
Children are
there's no doubt about it. And what they eat, how they think, the actions they take, what their habits are, is going
mhm.
to impact the future of the world, right?
Absolutely.
So again, the book called The Holistic RX for Kids: Parenting Healthy Brains and Bodies in a Changing World. What are some of the major takeaways in that book for people?
That currently our kids brains are being hijacked, and they're being hijacked, and they're making our parenting so much more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So when a child's brain and body and behavior doesn't work appropriately the way that it should, our parenting is miserable. Like, it's very difficult to parent children who are always throwing temper tantrums, constantly arguing with you, stealing, lying, making the wrong decision over and over and over again. And that's the difference. I mean, there's been thousands, literally thousands of parenting books out there, but nobody talks about the health connection. Because if you have a child that's depressed and wants to commit suicide, that child is really hard to parent. Or if somebody has severe oppositional defiance or ADHD, so have all these chronic health conditions, they're difficult to parent. So if their brain, if their body and their behavior doesn't work appropriately, it can lead to difficulties in the household and parenting issues. So easy parenting comes when you give your children, I mean, we can either brainwash our children one way or we can brainwash our children another way. If you can tell them Coca-Cola and all these things are good, guess what? It's fine for a short amount of time. Yes, they want the candy, but you're going to be miserable at the end. This way, you can teach your kids, empower your kids, give them the autonomy, give them the environment to allow their brains, their bodies, and their behavior to work appropriately. So then that improves the overall health of the family structure. And so if we can really help to keep our children's brains, bodies, and behavior balanced, it can create, we can create mindful, resilient children that no matter what life throws at them, they'll be able to, come out of it and just bounce back. Because obviously we know life is not perfect all the time. So
a lot of the time,
most of the time, and we're going to have our ups and downs. We're going to get our hearts broken. We're going to get hurt. We are, we're going to get angry. Most kids are going through traumas. So to giving them the tools that they need to be resilient in those situations is like the best gift a parent can give their children. Because I really wish that somebody taught me stress management. I really wish that somebody taught me about food and how to look at myself. And unfortunately, I really dive into about all the different pieces that will disconnect that prefrontal cortex from the amygdala. So therefore, we're making more irrational decisions. And just by putting a child's body back into balance, we can then improve their overall health and well-being and then when we do give them the autonomy, they're able to make well thought out decisions.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you. So there's something you said earlier that happiness doesn't sell. And I think we can prove that wrong. So I think I definitely, I know how our brains are wired towards things that aren't so happy and how that sells. I know exactly what you mean, but yeah. I think we can get happiness to sell.
Oh, absolutely. But right now, the entire world is going in that direction. Now we have to slowly shift it back, so then we can get it to sell.
We have to make that wide U-turn.
We have to make that wide U-turn.
Beautiful. Well, and again, everybody, that was the Holistic RX for Kids: Parenting Healthy Brains and Bodies in a Changing World. Definitely go check that out. And last question, and this is I know you've said it. You've said this whole talk was about this. But I want you to pretend for a minute that this is the last time you've ever had to share your thoughts. And you can only share 3 things with people. And 3 things that they should start implementing in their lives immediately to improve their health. What would they be?
Start with gratitude. Right? So gratitude, educating yourself, and then self-love. Right? I think we're both on the same.
Oh, yeah.
With that, because none of the rest is going to come if you're one. And I think gratitude, if we're really grateful, that's where the self-love comes from, one of the main pieces. And so, but the gratitude, immediately when you wake up in the morning, say 10 things that you're thankful for every day. And start educating yourself about all of these different things. I mean, there's so many great podcasts out there. There's so many great channels out there. There's so many great people to follow. Mm-hmm. Follow them. I mean, me and you are both doing it. If we can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah, that's right.
And educating yourself, surround yourself with people that will lift you up, not drag you down. And then that's where a lot of that self-love comes from.
Absolutely. Thank you. I totally agree. Gratitude, education, and self-love. So important. Is there anything you want to touch on, a quick recap of anything you're doing with your business, courses, books, things like that? Anything you want to share for people?
podcast that you're on tomorrow,
Yes,
which
we
I
do.
sent information, so I will send that to you. The links. Today I was doing limited like computers and work, but I will send that to you tonight or tomorrow morning.
I appreciate
But
it.
tomorrow you are coming on as our guest speaker for the Holistic Kid Show. So during this quarantine, because again, the kids have been doing it, they're living it. I'm like, okay, that's it. What am I going to do with them during this? So we started a podcast actually, and called the Holistic Kids Show, and we've had like the biggest names on it, including like Terry Walls and Kaya Proet and so many more amazing people. And now you're on it
Wow,
tomorrow.
that's awesome. All right,
So
that's company. I have to step up my game.
so that will be tomorrow. So we'd like to broadcast it live
Mm-hmm.
first, and because they're kids, and then my 13-year-old, my 10-year-old, my 8-year-old are the ones that take full charge of the interviews, which is really fun. They're getting more and more comfortable with it, so I'm trying to get them like to say jokes, but they're like, oh, I can't do that yet. But because they're kids, that they do that all the time. Anyway,
I'm gonna point that out for them tomorrow.
yes, I've been trying to like, come on, let's make it like, let's do it. They get like intimidated. Obviously, they're talking to adults like
Yeah.
every time. So, but
I'm
now
like a big kid, so it's okay.
yeah, so that'd be perfect. No, no, they love it. They love it. They help me prep the questions. They're all involved in it, and then it's on iTunes and all wherever podcasts are heard.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So, again,
So please,
everybody, I'm sorry, what was that?
oh, so yeah, please subscribe.
Yes,
Yay!
for sure. And the name of the podcast was what again?
The Holistic Kids Show.
Great, the Holistic Kid Show. And you can also find out more from Dr. Saeed on her Instagram, which is at HolisitcMomMD, and also Dr. Saeed's website, HolisitcMomMD.com. And of course, as always, everybody, I welcome your comments, feedback, suggestions. Please, you can always reach out to me. I'm open to any suggestions and people that you may want to have on the show. I'm not shy about reaching out to just about anybody. So you can check out all my previous episodes on my YouTube channel, The Art of Mindful Medicine, and my website, www.mindful.doctor. And of course, they're also on Instagram. And all the episodes are on Instagram Live first for now, anyways, until I can have the time to create something different where it's a little bit more stable. But to close, I always like to finish with a quote, and this is from Mary Ann Radmacher. I think that's how you say her last name. Sorry if I destroyed that, but it's a great quote. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is the little voice at the end of the day that says, I'll try again tomorrow. So, all right, everybody. Again, Madiha, thank you so much, and I will see you tomorrow.
Yes, we'll talk tomorrow.
All right, everybody. Stay awesome. Stay mindful. Have an awesome day.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.